as I think many, probably most of you will know, this year the ALNAP annual meeting, so this was in Addis Ababa, and it was hosted by Africa Humanitarian Action. And it was on the theme of the engagement of crisis-affected people in humanitarian action. It was the biggest meeting that the ALNAP network has had to date. And it was quite a broad theme in as much as it covered issues around accountability, issues around participation, some stuff on some areas of sort of beneficiary communications, variety of quite interesting discussions about relationship to the state. So there was quite a lot in it. And there were we had I think over 200 participants from 40 different countries representing almost 100 organisations. So it was, for those, some of you I recognise were there, and I think it was it was really great and great meeting. And some of you weren't there, and I'm very glad that you're here to join us to look at what came out of that meeting today. Because of the sort of breadth of scope, the importance of the topic, the very legitimate range of opinions around a lot of these things as well across the ALNAP network, putting a rope around the issue of engagement and kind of coming up with a single report on what happened at that very lively meeting is no easy task. And today we're launching the report. I'm awfully glad that we had Antonio and Dana to write it, because it certainly took a lot of thinking to kind of try and what I hope we've achieved, or what I say we, but actually of course I mean Antonio and Dana have achieved, is taking all of these different discussions and sort of extracting some of the key themes that came out of the 2 days in Addis and putting them into a kind of structure. And it's that in a minute I'm going to ask Dana to present. Before I do so, you'll notice we're not sitting behind a table in the spirit of some of the recommendations of the report. We are going to try and make this a slightly more interactive and less sort of panel-driven discussion than some of the things that we do here. So we'll be doing a short presentation, and then after that we won't have a panel, we'll just go straight to questions, comments and discussion, which will involve, I hope, those of you in the room and also those of you online. Anyone who wishes to tweet, please use the hashtag ALNAP2014, ALNAP2014. And I've been asked to say as well that if you are speaking, do be very careful to speak into the microphone. Please give your name and organisational affiliation if you have one. And do be careful to speak into the microphone, because otherwise the recording of this, particularly for colleagues in Asia for whom the timing of today's event is not ideal, and we hope that they'll be able to access the recording. If you don't speak into the mic, they won't be able to hear your questions. So if I can just briefly introduce Antonio and Dana. Antonio, many of you, I think many of you all know both of them, but Antonio worked for 26 years, I believe, for the United Nations in a variety of different roles: research, evaluation, program management. He was the chief of the Lessons Learnt unit at OCHA, an interesting role, and was also, I think, his last UN engagement was as the director of OCHA in Afghanistan between 1999 and 2002. Little personal footnote, which is where I met Antonio, but he's completely forgotten about that. From 2004 to 2013, he was a senior researcher at the Feinstein Center, Tufts, and maintains a strong relationship and is still doing work with the Feinstein Center now. Antonio has published widely on issues of humanitarian action, and particularly around Afghanistan. He wrote in 2004, Nation Building Unraveled, Aid, Peace and Justice in Afghanistan, and was also one of the authors of the Humanitarian Agenda 2015 research project, which I discovered today was actually completed in 2008, so 7 years early. That's speedy. And most recently, of course, The Golden Fleece. Thank you. The Golden Fleece, Manipulation and Independence in Humanitarian Action, 2012, which I hope some of you have read. Great book. Dana Brown is the director of the listening program at CDA. She began her career with the Peace Corps as a volunteer, I believe, and then worked for, among others, over 20 years in both humanitarian and development roles for Mercy Corps, for Habitat for Humanity, and for the US government in places including, but not restricted to, Indonesia, Kenya, Kosovo, and Tanzania. Apart from the study we'll be looking at today, Dana co-authored Time to Listen, hearing from people on the receiving end of international aid, which of course is one of the key works which contributed to many of the discussions in Addis in terms of allowing not only people working or people at the receiving end of humanitarian action, but also development action, to give their perspectives and opinions on how well that worked for them. And Dana was also very involved in the ALNAT work on feedback, of which I hope there are some, for those of you who are particularly interested in feedback and feedback mechanisms, there are some copies of that outside. So, enough of the introductions. I think we're all waiting to hear, Dana, what came out of the report. Would you like to